All right. Hey guys. So last two topics for this unit are indoor air pollution and noise pollution. So I always feel a little bit like College Board couldn't figure out where to put noise pollution, so they just dropped it in the middle of air pollution. It definitely has relevance to air pollution, but it also has relevance to water pollution. We'll go ahead and jump right in and talk about those two. Let's see, there we go. All right, so we're going to start out by talking about indoor air pollutants. So the air inside your home or inside any building, we as Americans, as people living in a developed country, spend more time indoors than we do outdoors. And so the level of pollution indoors is very significant. And it turns out actually that the air inside our homes is often can be very dangerous for us, for pollutants like mold or carbon monoxide, even something that seems relatively harmless and innocuous, such as pet dander, can definitely impact our health. So let's talk about probably the biggest natural air pollutant, and that is radon. So radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas that is produced by the decay of uranium in rock and soil. And it is a very common indoor air pollutant, particularly in areas with large amounts of what we call bedrock. So homes that are located over rock. Radon is less of an issue here in the Hampton Roads area because we aren't located on bedrock, but it is a significant problem the farther west you go in our state. And it can be an issue here as well. Here, a much more common problem is mold because of the level of humidity of our air. The mold itself is not actually the concern. It's the fact that mold reproduces through spores, and those spores become airborne, and those are an issue for us. And then dust. Dust, depending on the size of the particle, can be a significant issue for human health. So let's talk a little bit more about radon. The most stable isotope is radon-222. It has a half-life of about 4 days. As I said, this is a naturally occurring radioactive gas produced from the decay of uranium in soil. So the radon, being a gas, moves up through the soil and enters homes through the basement or through cracks in the walls or cracks in the foundation. It can also enter our homes if we are using groundwater, because it can dissolve in that groundwater and then enter our homes through the wells. The only way you will ever know if you have a radon problem is testing. Most of the time in the US, testing for radon is required as part of selling a home. A lot of homes in the western part of our state actually have radon detection systems that are running continuously. And it's measured in radiation units called picocuries per liter. The recommended action level by the World Health Organization is 2.7 picocuries per liter. The EPA recommended action level is 4.0 picocuries per liter. And so that would be a very significant radon problem. There are radon mitigation programs that you can undertake if you have a radon issue in your home. Generally speaking, all it takes is better ventilation of the lower areas of the home, so that that air is circulated and vented directly outdoors. Radon is actually the #1 environmental cause of cancer deaths, and it's the #2 cause of lung cancer deaths in the United States, second only to smoking. And radon combined with smoking actually increases your risk of lung cancer by a factor of 10. Radon is so dangerous to us because we inhale it and then we actually experience radiation from inside our own bodies as the radon decays. So that's a natural indoor air pollutant. Let's talk about some anthropogenic indoor air pollutants. Insulation is a good thing because it helps to keep us from having to use too much energy to heat or cool our homes. But the insulation itself, if we breathe in the small fibers, can actually be a pollutant. We talked about lead already. Lead can be in paint, or more commonly, we have VOCs like formaldehyde from building materials, furniture, upholstery, and carpeting. A lot of the time, especially when you purchase new products, they'll have a scent to them, and that tells you that there are VOCs coming off of that new product. Now, you'll sometimes see ads like this one. This is a ad from the Kitchen Cabinet Manufacturers Association trying to convince us that formaldehyde's not so bad. It comes from the trees in the forest. It's okay. It's a natural part of our world. Here's the problem. It's all about dose. So the average indoor concentration of formaldehyde is 50 to 100 times higher the outside amount. It only reaches dangerous levels indoors. And this is why the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control, only classifies formaldehyde as an indoor air pollutant. Formaldehyde is actually a pretty heavily regulated indoor air pollutant. And so the amounts of it that can be in materials are limited, but it can reach significantly dangerous levels in our homes. Okay. Combustion is another very, very common anthropogenic source of indoor air pollutants. As we've talked about, incomplete combustion can result in the production of carbon monoxide. Combustion of all forms results in sulfur dioxide, in nitrous oxides, also in particulate matter. And of course, hopefully at this point, you all know the dangers of both first and secondhand tobacco smoke. Now, most of our homes don't look like this. Most of us do not cook over open fires, don't rely on wood fires to heat our homes. But in many developing countries, their primary source for cooking as well as heating their homes is burning organic materials. That might be wood or charcoal. In some poorer places, it might be dung or the remnants of their crops, or even coal. This means that the poorest people are at the greatest risk. And we can see that if we look at this worldwide map of deaths from indoor smoke from solid fuels. And you can see that it's much more prevalent in Africa, in India, in Southeast Asia. So the developing countries are much more likely to be using solid fuels and to have issues with their indoor air quality as a result. Developed countries, on the other hand, indoor air pollution, even though we're not using combustion in our homes usually, or certainly not open combustion, is a bigger problem than outdoor air pollution. And that's simply because we spend so much of our time indoors. 90% of our time indoors or in cars. All right, so the last thing we need to cover when we're talking about indoor air pollution is this idea of sick building syndrome, which you'll sometimes see abbreviated as SBS. So sick building syndrome is when there's poor indoor air quality in a building. Usually, most of the time, this is a workplace. This causes illnesses for people who spend significant amounts of time in that building. As I said, common in workplaces, businesses, offices, even sometimes schools. So what causes sick building syndrome? The most common problem is mold or bacteria. other biological pollutants, but it can also be from radon, secondhand smoke, or even chemicals from cleaning supplies. Sick building syndrome is usually diagnosed by people having a health effect when they are spending time in that building, and it's stopping when they stop spending time in that building. Okay, last topic for this unit is noise pollution. So noise pollution is defined as sound at levels high enough to cause physiological stress or hearing loss. This can be from something like a rock concert. Most of the time when we talk about noise pollution, we're talking about industrial noise pollution. So this can be factories, this can be construction, this can be airports, so transportation, construction, and industry. When it comes to noise pollution, there are two factors that have to be considered, and that is the amount of time at which you spend at that particular noise level, as well as the noise level itself. So when we talk about a jackhammer, as we saw on the previous image, without earplugs in less than 1 second, that's going to cause hearing damage. With earplugs, it's going to cause damage after 90 seconds. And so people who work with jackhammers have specialized hearing protection in order to protect them. But even a rock concert or participating in the marching band can give you decibel exposure or noise exposure after a certain amount of time that can actually cause hearing loss. So noise exposure definitely has a significant impact on cognitive development in small children. It can actually cause issues with physical development as well as behavioral issues. So noise pollution is particularly significant for children, but it also causes problems in adults as well. Okay, when it comes to other organisms, since this is an environmental science class, it certainly has a significant impact on animals as well. It can cause stress in animals simply from being exposed to the sound, but it can also mask the sounds that they need to hear or the sounds that they make needing to communicate or to hunt. It can also damage animals' hearing, and it can cause changes in their migratory routes. Aquatic animals are particularly affected by noise pollution because sound carries farther through water than it does through air. And so what we're finding is that marine mammals are among those most significantly affected. And so as you read in your textbook, there are a lot of industries that are getting into trying to find ways to protect marine mammals from the underwater sounds of ships, as well as the effects of sonar that vessels frequently use to survey the ocean floor and for navigation purposes, as well as for military purposes. So that's it. As always, if you have questions, let me know.